Hi, everyone.
Greetings, everybody. We're on page 111 of the Proclaimer's book, and one paragraph this time, and it's a meaty one. Lots to talk about. And it's just come after the subhead, Filling Spiritual Needs with Bible Literature. So they just glanced right by the 1975 issue as if what happened there? Then they get to, after that we got really emphatic about the door-to-door preaching. Now, why did that happen? What's the connection that you're not making here, in the text anyway, which is some disappointment about 1975. We made the point last time that probably 1 million people left in this 1976 to 80 period. 1 million you still gained though, because you were making disciples very quickly. But what's the connection with the flip-flops that you didn't mention here about the proof texts for door-to-door work? Namely Acts 20 and Acts 5:42. What happened? Well, you
Just don't
first of all, you changed your interpretation, which led to the stumbling, including some of your leaders. And then you doubled down on the preaching work, despite having made these concessions about the proof text you used.
And then go back to using the proof text that you've disqualified before.
Which they're still doing.
Yeah.
Here we are 40 years later, they're still using those same proof texts. Now they go to another subject, apostasy, at headquarters in 1980 approximately. And now they don't make a connection between 1975, the preaching work, and the apostasy, but we will make it for them. Yeah, they say this. Another situation also needed attention. By 1980, a number of persons who had shared in the activities of Jehovah's Witnesses for some years, including some who had served prominently in the organization, had been in various ways trying to cause division and oppose the work of Jehovah's Witnesses, or the work Jehovah's Witnesses were doing. To fortify Jehovah's people against such apostate influence, the Watchtower carried such articles as Remain Solid in the Faith, August 1, 1980, Quietly Bringing in Destructive Sects, that's September 15, 1983, and Reject Apostasy, Cling to the Truth, April 1, 1983. While the book Let Your Kingdom Come, published in 1981, emphasized the reality that the kingdom is at hand, having been established in the heavens in 1914. The governing body did not allow the efforts of opposers to distract it from the primary objective of Jehovah's Witnesses, proclaiming God's kingdom. Where should we start? How about judging your brothers?
Yeah.
People that served, you say, for some years, even prominently in the organization.
So there's an imputing of bad motives to people, and presenting it as if they've, while they were witnesses, while they were viewed as prominent and loyal witnesses, they always had it in mind to cause division and oppose the work. They were trying to do that while they were in the organization?
Or even if you just say, what they mean by that is at the end of their career as Jehovah's Witnesses, they were trying to cause division. Now, if you know any of these people, and we've met them, and you know the books they've written, and we've read a lot of them, none of these people have such motives.
Most of them didn't want to leave. They just wanted the Watchtower to own up to things and to recognize the problems they had with the way things were handled, the way things were interpreted, the flip-flops. They were trying to deal with those issues. But because they even knew those issues, they end up getting kicked out.
They were kicked out. Most of them didn't leave voluntarily. They were removed. And then you realize, these are people who had made great sacrifices, as you concede by the fact that they were prominent in the organization, some of them, and in it for sometimes decades, their entire lives. And then when they leave, they have to make more sacrifices in a way that no Jehovah's Witnesses who stay in the organization do.
So, all this was happening. Ray Franz is one of the ones they're talking about here. But all these articles that happen right around that time, it's interesting that they're the same issues that keep coming up about 1914 and 607, that date. That's why many left back then. They saw the problem with this. They just doubled down on it. And we left in the late 80s, or were kicked out in the late 80s. And 1914 was one of the issues I brought up to my family. And at the time, I remember my dad saying, well, no, it's not talked about that much. And
It's
then
not that
a
important.
few months, yeah, it's not that important. A few months later, he says, wow, I'm seeing it all the time now. So, that shows you that this propaganda works. People don't even notice what's being emphasized. If it's not important to them, they don't think it's being emphasized, but it's everywhere.
But let's connect the dots now. So 1914-607 is obviously related to 1975. It's about chronology.
Yeah.
And the preaching work is about chronology. So all of these things, and the flip-flops too, that's about things that are basic to us, like are we supposed to go door to door, and is it biblical?
Yeah.
All of these things, therefore, are related to the apostasy issue.
Yeah.
And you haven't basically repented of this slander of the brethren and of the wonky chronology that is not based on the Bible. You haven't repented of it now in 40 plus years.
Yeah. So they just laid another charge on themselves, slander.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the book, I remember that book came out in 1981, Let Your Kingdom Come, and at the back of it is an appendix doubling down on the 607-1914 connection. And again, they haven't repented of that. They've let the issue slide very visibly in the last 40. They let it slide, but they haven't backed off it, and they haven't repented of it.
Yeah. So this last sentence here about their efforts not to be distracted from their primary objective, proclaiming God's kingdom. Which kingdom?
Which kingdom?
The kingdom that they believe happened in 1914.
Yeah. They say...
Based on a false date, a calculation that came from a false beginning, 607.
Yeah, look at that sentence again. The book, Let Your Kingdom Come, emphasized the reality that the kingdom is at hand. Notice the time element.
Yeah.
Now, they had said the same in 1889, in the second volume of Studies in the Scriptures, the time is at hand. But then you had an invisible kingdom inaugurated in 1878. Does anybody know that now?
No.
Now it's 1914. So, you can slide this slide rule can be slid and slid and slid till finally nobody's left.
How can you think of it as being at hand? Even writing it here in 93, the time is at hand. They're telling us that they're saying this in the 80s. And they've been saying it before that forever. So how is it at hand?
It's meaningless. Words are meaningless at a time like I like this. Whereas you can say about the Christendom, there's been a lot of false expectations over the centuries, but there's been no emphasis upon times and seasons generally in the mainline church.
And they're expecting...
What are the churches expecting, by the way?
Yeah, they're expecting a visible return.
So they would...
So they're anxious, or they'll talk about, Lord, come. They want him to come. They know that's the ultimate solution, is the Lord to come.
So Christendom, the dispute or argue about sometimes the nature of the kingdom, whether it's on earth or in heaven, but they all expect a visible king coming to rule with his saints. You are part of that group of saints that will rule with him, although a lot of Christians play that down. But all of them believe there's not a two-class system among God's people.
And if you
say there is
an invisible return, that's hard for people to argue with.
Impossible.
It's invisible. I have an invisible friend. How can you argue with that? It's invisible.
And the more you stress the invisibility of the king, the more you exalt your own visible organization. And that's the way it works in not just the Watchtower, but all such groups.
So it's really a phantom kingdom. It's not real.
It's a counterfeit.
Yeah.
And what's our link?
Our link is Paradise Lost for Jehovah's Witnesses, Watchtower's Counterfeit Kingdom.
Yeah, that's the first of the 19 videos.
Yeah, and the playlist. So from the beginning of the Paradise Lost series.
Good. See you all soon.